I don't think so.
I don't wear deodorant. I love vape.
How do you get your abortions paid for?
I pay for them.
I thought you said
How many do you
free.
pay for?
Upwards of 50.
Really?
Oh yeah.
You piece of
Bunch of misogynistic mother. Take your male privilege somewhere else.
How about you being aggressive?
I'm being aggressive.
us! Excuse us! Wow! Watch out!
That's the guys that attack Alex Jones.
From the front lines of the information war, it's Alex Jones.
What do you think the TPP is?
TTP?
No, what is TTP?
The DPP?
The what?
TPP.
I have no idea.
Nope. I have no idea what that is.
I ain't got a clue.
I have no idea.
Do any of y'all know what the heck the TPP is? Any of y'all?
No.
No.
Nobody knows what this is.
I have no idea. The toilet paper products.
The Texas Petroleum people?
The terrorist group? I don't know.
And my name is a WWE Thunderstruck Roller Coaster. God bless you.
Words of wisdom.
I would honestly have no idea.
Well, it gives information and entertaining. Well, I don't know exactly the words in English.
And that's what we call guessing.
Probably some Congress thing about homeless men.
Tyrannical people in power.
Actually pretty close. Actually pretty darn close.
Toilet paper.
The TPP, or the Trans-Pacific Partnership,
Trans what?
Pacific Partnership, is a alliance of corporate global businesses that will then be able to, in any of the three segments, Asian, Pacific, European, or American, will be able to bypass any or all of the laws and rules in that place and be able to do away with currency and due process. What do you think about that?
Reminds me of what China does with their free market zones.
I would definitely have to hear a lot more information because this sounds a lot like a bit of conspiracy theory to me.
I think it sounds a little bit far-fetched.
I'm being totally honest, I just don't care right now. Is that bad? Like, I was just so unprepared for this.
I think that's awesome, dude. Actually, yeah, I think it's awesome.
Why?
I mean, because we need people like that, I guess, yeah.
I literally have no clue. I haven't watched the news in a while, man.
Okay, well, there you have it. He hasn't watched news. None of us have. We just vote for Obama and pray that he doesn't smite us with his mighty hand of vengeance.
My first question for you is, which party do you support?
Third party libertarian.
Okay, good. Okay, good. I wanted to make sure I didn't end up on some like anti-Obama or something, because it is Texas.
Yes, because that would be devastating. The TPP is fine, just don't insult the Lord and Savior Barack Obama. Now, joining me now in studio is David Knight, and you are watching a very live edition of this InfoWars Nightly News. We have just received word the Biggs has landed. It's going to take him about 30 minutes to get to the site. Then we're going to be Skyping in with him live if everything goes well. I wanted to let you know that you can tweet us your questions on Twitter. Tweet them directly to our Twitter handles. I am Leanne McAdoo. Dew just created a Twitter today. You can follow him. That's Dew's News with a Z at the end. And David Knight.
Libertarian. That's Libertarian. Not libertarian, liberty.
Libertarian. And so we'll have the guys pull those up so you can see for yourselves. Now, earlier I mentioned that Dennis Hastert, he was the former House Speaker, took responsibility, took credit for helping to pass the Patriot Act in 2001. He was so happy about that, helped get it reauthorized again in 2005. And now it is that very Patriot Act and the provisions that were in there that were used to indict him on charges related to paying $3.5 million in hush money, which the federal law enforcement was able to detect that using the Patriot Act.
It's kind of interesting that this guy kind of came out of nowhere. And he was in place when September 11th came along, when they needed somebody to push the Patriot Act through. And, one of the things that we're going to see in this, and of course, Alex Jones talked with Wayne Madsen a great deal about this today. We're going to have a clip about that towards the end of after this segment. But they were talking about why is it that we have so many corrupt politicians in leadership of both parties? And of course, the answer is they need people who are compromised that they can use as puppets. And so then the other question becomes, why did they wait until now to come after Dennis Hastert? Why? He was in there longest time a Republican has ever been Speaker of the House for 8 years. Now they're coming after him. Very interesting, the timing that this is coming up with. But I've got some other questions here, too. Let's take a look at what they're really coming after him for. Because, we ought to also ask the question, how did a guy go from being a wrestling coach in a high school? How did he go from that to becoming a multimillionaire who could pay millions of dollars to a blackmailer? Because that's what happened here.
Right.
We should look at the obscene concentration of power and money in Washington and what this tells us. Of course, we see it with the Clintons. We see it with the Bushes. We see it with Obama himself. This is a guy who had never done anything in his life except be a community organizer. He was selected by the elites and put into place just like Dennis Hastert. And so the question about this becomes, and we'll talk about what the charges are, but it's really, he got this cash, they're saying legally, but now he is facing a very long time in prison for cash that he picked up legally. But let's first talk about some of these charges that have come up. There was an interesting find, I think it was The Hill that found this last year on C-SPAN. Dennis Hastert was on talking about his speakership, and it was open lines, and they had this creepy call. This was put out by Drudge. Let's go to that clip right here. Okay, you don't have that clip just yet. Okay, we're gonna go back to that clip. But basically, he was a high school coach, as I mentioned, wrestling coach before he became a politician. Okay, got that clip. Let's run that clip.
Illinois is our next call. Here's Bruce, Independent Line. Hi.
Hello, Danny.
Hey, how are you doing?
Pretty good. Remember me from Yorkville?
Bruce, you're on. Go ahead with your question or comment.
I think he's gone.
So this
Just
guy
called
just calls
in
up.
to troll him there.
He just calls up. Yeah, you remember me from Yorkville because that's the name of the high school, the town, the high school. Evidently, he was paying this guy, had agreed to pay this individual $3 million, Leanne. And after he paid out about $1.7 million, he stopped. So maybe this guy was kind of firing a shot across the bow at that point. Now we know that there are multiple charges. This was leaked out today by people with the Justice Department, the FBI, the ones investigating this. They called up the LA Times and they were telling them this is allegations of sexual misconduct with children that he had in high school, underage people that he had in high school. And so it's interesting that they're pulling this out and they're shopping this around because that's not what they're going to send him to jail for.
Right.
The statute of limitations has long since gone away. That was 35 years or more because he became a politician in about 1980, 81. So these charges would be 35 years old. There's a statute of limitations. So he's not going to go to jail for that. But they're creating this whisper campaign right now to discredit him and to keep people from asking, why is he going to be going to jail? Because the reason he's going to be going to jail, and that's what we want to talk about, is this structuring charge.
Right.
This is something that he helped to create as part of the Patriot Act. And he's going to be hoisted by his own petard right into jail because it looks like they could get as much as 530 years against him. They're saying they're going to take each of these structuring charges. What he did to pay this blackmailer off, first he took out 15 withdrawals of $50,000. And again, it's his money, okay? But that was reported to the FBI as being something that was suspicious. So they began an investigation. They talked to him and he said, well, I just don't trust the banks. I'm keeping the money. I'm just, it basically wasn't really any of their business why he was taking this money out. At that point, though, he decided he was going to do it secretly. So then he started taking out withdrawals at less than $10,000 so that it wouldn't get noticed, except that he'd already been noticed. So they started monitoring his account. He did that 106 times. For each of those, they say that they're going to charge him up to a maximum of 5 years for each of those accounts. So that would be 530 years. Now, consider this, Leanne. If he had been convicted of sexually molesting a minor, in Illinois, he would have gotten between 6 to 30 years. 530 years for structuring. If he had robbed a bank, because this is his money that he's withdrawing, if he'd gone in and robbed a bank, he would have gotten 6 to 55 years. The upper limit would be if it was armed robbery and he hurt people, okay? Wow. But for taking out his own cash and not filing the paperwork with the government, this law that he helped to pass could possibly send him to jail for 530 years. And so we have to really ask, when we're looking at this, they're going to try to get you focused on his sexual perversions.
Right. And that's the Department of Justice made the decision to not even include that in the indictment, to specify his past
He had previous bad acts.
Right.
Quote unquote.
But they went around and spent the day putting that in the media's ear that, in quotes, Hastert paid a man to conceal sexual misconduct while the man was a student at the high school where Hastert taught. So they're wanting everyone to just say, oh, throw him in jail. He's a pervert. What an awful person. Where, like you're saying, it's actually what's happening with his own money. Where if you were to, if he was to have decided something like this with his attorney, where they would have paid this person off to not take it to court or something like that, that's perfectly legal. Yeah. That's a legal thing to do. But because he did the structuring process, that's where you get into trouble.
Exactly.
Because of the Patriot Act.
Absolutely. And I think it's outrageous that the statute of limitations has run out on the sexual molestation of minors. I don't think there ought to be one. But nevertheless, that's what the law is. But we see that these laws, these structuring laws, they began a long time ago. And they basically have created an entire industry around this. And we're going to talk about what an assistant attorney general said to the anti-money laundering conference. There's an entire industry within the banks. And basically, you need to understand that although you may think that Dennis Hastert deserves this, and he does, he deserves to go to jail for what he's done. He doesn't deserve to go to jail for taking his own cash out of the bank. And you need to understand that if you support that, you're in line to have that done to you as well. We've got a couple of cases just to make it just so that you understand and see how this works out for individuals. Of course, we've had people who get their cash stolen from them constantly when they're stopped on the road by the Highway Patrol. We just had a recent case of a guy who was traveling cross country. He had cash on him. He was going to California to start a new business, and the TSA on the trains confiscated that cash. So that is civil asset forfeiture. Now, that is bad enough. But then it gets even worse with structuring, because what's bad about civil asset forfeiture, they say it's civil, so we don't have to give you due process. We don't have to charge you with a crime. We don't have to convict you in court in a trial. We can just merely say that your property was involved in committing this crime, and we charge your property with criminal action, this inanimate object, and seize that property, or they call it forfeit that property, is the way that they put it. So we see that this has affected people in a variety of ways, but we've seen in North Carolina, just within the last week and a half, 2 cases come to light of one attorney from the Department of Justice that's based in North Carolina going after 2 small businesses and taking all of the money out of their accounts. In one case, it was a convenience store. They took $107,000 out of this man's convenience store. In the other case, it was a business. They'd been in business for 30 years. And because of money that they were withdrawing, they said that it was structured. Very subjective, the way they do this. They said it was structured. They confiscated all of their property. This is the way it's been reported. Now, the first guy, the convenience store owner, Lyndon McClellan, had a bank account for his convenience store. It was seized by the IRS, and at first he didn't understand why. The IRS said that it suspected that he was violating federal structuring laws. Do you understand that? It suspected. It didn't
he wasn't
find
even charged with a crime.
That's right. They had no evidence. They just suspected that he was structuring deposits. Now, if you've got a convenience store and you're collecting cash, when you deposit the cash, that may not be any criminal intent whatsoever. And they merely look at the amount of money that you put in or the amount of money that you take out, and they subjectively determine